Okay, everyone, welcome to week two crypto coaching. So the crypto coaching sessions are actually a space for us to discuss insights while doing like the assignments that we send out every Monday, and they're also part of the online study portal. I want to start with showing you actually how to find everything. Oh, this is the wrong. This is basically how it should look like on your end when you log into the Unit Masters online portal. And then you have on the left side, like our live mentors. Some of them are not confirmed yet, so you will get, like, we will update that as soon as we have confirmed speakers. And then we have the recordings of every week you find in this session. And then we have a little bit of, if you want to help bring more participants, this program will stay open until end of week three. And after that, we close it so people cannot sign up for this cohort anymore, but for the next cohort, which will be January 17th. So by that time, like, we close the registration and then put a new registration link. So if you have any friends or anyone wants to still join, they can still do so until end of next week. And here was the orientation where we have all this administrative kind of information onto how to onboard the Unit Masters program, how do you get your certification, and a few like bookmarks for community resources, which we don't really monitor. So like basically when you have cool readings and so on that you are very excited to share with the community, you can just add that to that bookmark me session. And then others might find it useful when they scroll through it and read it. So last week we spoke about decentralization and the Internet of Value. So that's done. And hopefully you also like did your assignments, reviewed like the sessions, and then put down your notes, because you will see time flies very, very fast. And 6 weeks are like this. And after 6 weeks, when you look surprised by what you already understood after week one and how now you are understanding the same concepts differently. Well, we've run this program for 6 times, so I kind of know it's always a similar pattern. Um, so now we are in week two, and this week's learning task is to understand what is actually the different parts of this ecosystem. Right? The blockchain industry is more than just Bitcoin, more than just Ethereum, Polkadot, Dogecoin, and so on. There are these protocols or these layer one solutions that each have their own ecosystem. But in general, when we go on a bird's level, the meta level, you will see it's an industry with different sub industries, and each players in the sub industries, they have different roles. And this week, we look at different parts of the ecosystem, try to understand what is their incentive or what is their reward for providing certain services to the ecosystem, and what kind of services are they providing, and why are these services actually important for the ecosystem. So we have individual assignments and study gang assignments. Individual assignments are really there to help you reflect in a structured way about certain concepts and so on. And group study gang assignments are assignments that we actually discuss in these forums, but also in your study groups. So we have like Wednesday, a centralized kind of format with the crypto coaching where we can come together and you can speak to the people from the unit team. But on your self-organized study gangs, you can go into more details and discuss back and forth what you think and share knowledge within each of your brains, I would say. So let's look at this week's individual assignment. And for the warm up, we asked you to get a bird's view on the ecosystem around blockchain. And then we asked you to actually pick a blockchain project of choice. Yeah, and we asked you to go to CoinMarketCap to see an overview. CoinMarketCap is the place where you can find the largest blockchain protocols, typically sorted by market cap. And then we can see the largest is like Bitcoin, then the second largest, Ethereum, Binance, Tether, Solana, and so on. They change, right? Like Solana is now on position 5. Last week, I think it was on position 4. So it goes back and forth, and it mirrors a little bit that instability or volatility that is currently happening in the crypto markets. And then Polkadot on range 7, and you can see how much market cap they have, 42 billion. The largest two that haven't changed in quite a while is like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Bitcoin with a 1.1 trillion market cap and Ethereum with a 500 billion market cap. So this is the place to get like very high level information. Then we ask you to search for an ecosystem template, right? So where it shows like this is the Solana ecosystem and these are the different players in the ecosystem. I hope some of you found that, and if not, we'll have time to discuss that. And then we actually ask you to look like on identifying the players that are very active in that ecosystem of your choice. Ecosystem of choice means like, who are actually the biggest service providers in the Bitcoin ecosystem, who are actually the biggest wallets, custodians, and so on in the Ethereum ecosystem, the exchange services, and so on. Like validators, news and media, regulators, and so on and so forth. One ecosystem just like real names, but the overarching goal is actually to get a meta level for the entire ecosystems, irrespective of the single blockchain. So then we also had an optional task of looking at the unit masters speakers and try to map them to the above stakeholder groups where possible. We typically ask that you look into that so that you can be prepared for the speaker sessions and you kind of understand what might be their expertise and what might not be their expertise. So for example, on Tuesday, yesterday, we had a session with somebody who's coming from the investor side, right? He was from Greenfield One, which is like one of these leading European crypto funds, and then they might have certain expertise. Before that, he was in validator staking industry. On Thursday, tomorrow, we will have a speaker who's working for one of these on-ramp providers. So these payment services on-ramp providers, which is a service that provides the transition from fiat currency like euros, US dollars, or whatever normal currency you use in your local residence. And then how do you get that service? Like, how do you get that money into a digital currency? So that's like he's from Ramp Network, so that would be an on-ramp provider. When you scroll through the list of the different speakers, and hopefully we will have an updated version very soon, then you can try to see, whoa, okay, this person is from here, here, and here. So I can probably ask them questions about this certain area of the blockchain ecosystem. Okay, I think with that said, we're going to look at the second, and then we'll go into different breakout rooms and to discuss our different insights. And then basically what we asked you to do, and this is what we're going to discuss in our study group, like in our little breakout sessions. We asked you to look at these different ecosystem players and then pick 5 that are of interest to you, because obviously it's a lot of ask to study an entire ecosystem in a week. So we asked you to just pick 5 that are interesting to you, and then we asked you to just set a little bit of a time frame, because we know you can get into a deep rabbit hole when you start looking and doing some research on the ecosystem. And then we asked you to find like 3 brand names of providers for these different ecosystem players, like these cryptocurrency exchanges. What are the big names in the industry? How do they look like? What's their logo and so on? What's the role? Yeah. What task or service do they provide to the ecosystem? What's actually the role of a cryptocurrency exchange, a decentralized one or a centralized one? What's the role of a wallet provider? Yeah, who are the main wallet providers, for example? And how do these ecosystem players generate revenue? Yeah, are they a sustainable entity that somehow generates a fee or revenue for the services that they provide, or are they actually there because they're subsidized by some other entity for whatever reason? And then we would find out what would be the interest of having this player subsidized. And then how do they relate to each other? If you took 2 out of these 5 stakeholders that you put out of the market, yeah, what would happen then to the ecosystem? Would it then not work anymore, or are these services just nice to have, or are they actually crucial? And we ask you to, if you want to be like super top notch, you can visualize the relationships. This is like more for the creatives in the group. And what if happened if they didn't exist? We already talked about that. And then in the end, and this is maybe something you can start now starting week 2, and then refine with every week that we progress on the 6 weeks journey. At the end of the 6 weeks course, you hopefully have your own ecosystem map, and you kind of look at it and you kind of know, oh, okay, I meet this and this company, or I read in the news about this and this company, and hey, they belong here in my map. And then you kind of get a better understanding of how can you actually assess the information about them, the news about them, if it makes sense or not. So, having said that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna break you, like put you into breakout room groups. We're gonna give you 15 minutes. I will try to have like 4 to 5 people in one group. So hopefully within that group, some of you have done the homework. And if not, that's fine too. Then you can do it together while you're in the group, because you have more than 10 minutes. So you can even split up and do a little bit of research. And then we want you to discuss at least 1 or 2 stakeholder groups, right? Pick 1 or 2 of these, like validators, news media outlets, wallets, exchanges, and try to teach each other what are the main names, how do the main logos look like, or where did you find the information, so that within your little group you have discussed 2 players within the next 15 minutes. And then we come back, and then I think if we have time, we will split again into another round so that you have the chance to speak a lot. Because what we think in Unit Masters is the more you speak about these things, the faster you learn. And also you learn where you actually don't have a clue. While you're trying to express something, you probably learn, oh, actually, I don't have enough vocabulary, but maybe somebody else in your team has. And then we come together for a wrap up and look towards what's happening next week. So I'll do that, and I create breakout rooms. You'll be like 3 to 5 people in the room. So don't worry if you're only 3, you can already get started. Hopefully you can introduce each other also a little bit and make sure that whoever wants to speak has the chance to speak a little bit, because through speaking you develop that kind of fluency about blockchain economy. Rooms should be actually open now. Just 1 second. I need to close the rooms after 15 minutes. And after the rooms are closed, you still have 30 seconds. So you will notice. Okay. Oh, everyone, welcome back. Hope you had good discussions in your study groups. I think what we can do now is hear 1 or 2 recaps about like your sample answers to that assignment. And we created the assignments actually in a way like you can do them 10 times, right? And every time you would look from a different perspective. And we have a few Unit Masters participants who come over and over to do the same program, because, for the second week, like always, you can do 10 times the exercise because there's so much to study. Lorenzo is cheating. He has help. Somebody says that. Okay. Yeah, like looking at the world through an unbiased view, I guess. Okay, so the way it works is maybe even before we get started with debriefing the exercise, I want to get a quick feeling of, what is the level of expertise in the field. And the way we're going to do that is you see the reactions button, like this smiley face with the plus. Yes. So if you feel like, so there's 3 different answer categories, right? If you feel like you're a complete beginner, Unit Master is like really your first touch point into the industry, then you're gonna vouch with a heart. If you're like somebody who has a little bit of experience, already owns a few crypto here and there, and kind of understands the basic level, but is just here to deepen the knowledge, then you go for the celebration. I'll show you which one I mean. Like, so if you're a newbie, you're a heart. If you're like celebration, then you're like a little bit involved. And if you feel like, hey, I actually know a little bit more than the average person in this room, but I still just want to participate because I love to connect, then you use the cheers. And you can just do it now, and then we can see how many people are what category. Yeah. Okay, cool. So majority are like people who kind of are really new, but we also have a few more experienced people. So that's a good mix. And we actually never know who is in the room with whom. So I think it's a good way to spread knowledge and communicate across, like, in a decentralized way. Okay, so now maybe somebody from the, let's say, mid-level or experienced level can give a short debrief about how they basically spoke about that exercise. Maybe you just pick one or two stakeholders in the ecosystem, like a exchange for one of the preferred ecosystems, and then explain to us how to, like, how to understand what these stakeholders are doing. You can just raise your hands and then I will call you up. Okay, thank you. Gareth, maybe just a few, like, also say from which perspective you're looking at things, what's like your view, your training.
So we had, well, I just sort of maybe share something. We had some interesting questions around custodianship, which I sort of picked up. That it's an interesting question because everybody has a different understanding of custodianship, and in trying to connect it into the task, it's there's a nice relationship that explains the whole thing quite well. So most people will know that there's custodial and non-custodial wallets. And if we take a company like Bitstamp, which is an exchange that's been around for 11 years or 10 years or something like that, it's one of the sort of, I think it's the second or third exchange in the world. So if you take a company like Bitstamp, when you go and buy Bitcoin on Bitstamp, for example, and you leave your funds on that exchange, then they take the role of custodian and they provide you with a custodial wallet, because they are actually looking after your private keys. And what's particularly interesting is on the back of that, Bitstamp in turn use a company, for example, like BitGo, which is a company that specializes in custodianship. So that's their business. They only look after coins for other companies. So ultimately, when you go and put your coins on Bitstamp, they are not actually the custodian, even though they perform that function. The actual custodian is BitGo, for example. So it was interesting to discuss that relationship between those companies.
Yeah. Can you elaborate a little bit on, what's the relevance for the question of like self-custodian, like non-custodial or custodial solution? In which way does it matter to participants in the blockchain ecosystem? What's like the upsides or the opportunities, and where are the limitations of, for example, using a custodial service?
So ultimately, I suppose it's all fit for purpose. It's all about, what is your skill level and what are your requirements? A lot of people look at, so ultimately Bitcoin, there's a saying in Bitcoin, not your keys, not your coins. So if you don't have the private keys, then technically those coins aren't yours. And it's very much the same with a bank. A lot of people think, they've got $10,000 in the bank. They actually think that they physically own $10,000. But, when you have $10,000 in the bank, you don't actually have 10,000. You've just got an IOU from the bank that says they owe you 10,000. If that bank goes bust, your 10,000 is gone, unless you're in a jurisdiction that has government insurance. But there's limits to that. Whereas with Bitcoin, you are in a position that you can physically take control of all your assets whenever you want, and nobody can censor it. Nobody can control it. Nobody can stop you from doing it. But there's trade-offs, because if you lose your keys, your Bitcoin's gone. So some people may prefer to have institutions look after their crypto. And this is where custodians come into play, because the system has advanced to such a way that you can have fairly trustworthy entities manage your coin for you, which, especially like corporates, they like that kind of service, because it takes away that risk. So it's all about risk management, I suppose. But I think ultimately the nice thing is that with custodial and non-custodial, the big thing is that you get choice.
Amazing, thanks. So you dropped already like a few buzzwords, and it's important if you take part in that unit masters program that you kind of understand what's the difference between custodial and non-custodial solutions on different layers of the tech stack. And then maybe if someone, and then I'll call up Ignacio, if someone can share with us, how would custodians in general generate revenue? What's their revenue generation model? Can somebody name one or two famous custodians and like share with us how would they actually benefit? Is that an answer to that, Ignacio, or a different?
Different answer.
Okay, let me call up Karsten then, and then we give the voice to you. Karsten, please.
One custodial solution we had in our group was, for example, MetaMask, which is probably a wallet a lot of people know. But yeah, on the custody, for example, there's services like what they call Fiona, who do B2B custody. So a lot of times institutions don't do custody on their own. They have services for that, and they just charge a fee for custody. So it's pretty simple. Or if there's also custody providers who, when they custody your coins and you stake them, they take a part of that fee. So yeah, and the exchanges who also custody, obviously, for people who live off the exchange fees. So it always depends on not all custody providers charge for the custody directly. Some also have indirect business models around handling the coins.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So typically what we're seeing in the market now is there's demand for people like institutions who don't want to privately hold their assets because like for claims, like for accountability reasons, or I don't know how to say in English, for legal reasons, right? They want to find a service that can be insured and that takes care of safely and securely storing the private key to which you can access the funds. And there's maybe a handful, or maybe by now, maybe 10 different providers of custody in the markets. And you can just do some Google research, like the largest custody providers in Europe, the ones in US, and which protocols they work with. Because custody providers provide like security services for like the custody of the assets, but then they have to integrate. So it's a technological solution because these coins need to be integrated into their solutions. And then basically what happens is they are very, very careful with which blockchain protocols they work with because it costs them some money to integrate these solutions. And that can give you, like, when you look at it from a higher level, some good indication of how far is a blockchain project already. Have they got other people in the ecosystems willing to invest money to support and integrate their blockchain into existing services? That's like, an easy way to understand the level and seriousness of a blockchain project. Okay, then we have Ignacio.
Yes, thank you. We were talking with our group within the Terra ecosystem, Terra Luna. We basically, I looked for an image of the whole Terra ecosystem and try to briefly describe each of the actors and their incentives. But I wanted to focus on decentralized exchange. For example, in the case of Terra ecosystem, it would be Terra.
Just 1 second.
To be one.
Can we first explain what is Terra in general, and then how big are they, and then we speak about the decentralized exchange services.
I will try. Terra is a crypto ecosystem which is powered by the coin Luna. One of its main assets would be UST, that is a stable coin. So Luna is the base asset in which you can mint UST based on the Luna coin. That's, I think, the base of the Terra ecosystem in my understanding. And then you have all the different services and the ecosystem we were talking about surrounding this smart contract. That I am not sure about Luna being a smart contract platform. That I'm not sure about it. I know about its it's used for minting UST, but I don't know exactly about the smart contract platform within the Terra ecosystem. But as I understand, you can still make different tokens within the Terra ecosystems. I don't know if it's that with Luna, with another coin, but then you can trade these tokens in a decentralized exchange. That was the one that the ecosystem point that I was going to.
Okay,
go.
amazing. So it's a
If
top
you-
13 coin on CoinMarketCap, and it has some
Yeah.
big market capitalization. And now we saw that it has some, when you go on the website, I'm just doing it so everybody else can also follow
Yes,
what we're
great.
talking about. So we
Yes.
go onto wallets and we can actually see which wallets are integrated. We haven't spoken about wallets, but we've heard the terms custodial and non-custodials before. Can look at, actually, there was some place exactly when you click on markets, that's where you can see where you can buy that Luna
Yeah.
token. And here, these are centralized exchanges, but we wanted to speak about a decentralized exchange on the Luna ecosystem, right? Do you find them here? What's their name?
TerraSwap. But
Oh,
I don't know.
TerraSwap. I don't think it's here. So we basically have to
No.
search for TerraSwap. This is, I did some research on the Solana ecosystem while you guys were doing your breakout sessions. So this is TerraSwap probably. Yeah. What's
I think
what's
Solana
the
is
idea?
connected to TerraSwap.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are. What is the definition of a decentralized exchange compared to a centralized exchange?
Well, centralized exchange is a peer-to-peer exchange, while a centralized exchange, there is a centralized platform like Binance, for example, that has the liquidity and takes the liquidity from the users. And with that liquidity, they change the tokens for you. But in a decentralized exchange, all the users provide the liquidity with an incentive to providing it. And then you can trade those tokens depending on the amount of liquidity a token has. There are pros and cons, because in a decentralized exchange, you can find a lot of scam coins. But in a centralized exchange, you most of the time have certified or at least reviewed coins that a centralized exchange accepts and has the liquidity to change. But in a decentralized exchange, it's more open, free, and it has the decentralization, philosophy that we all try to look for within crypto ecosystem, where all participants can have an incentive to share their value, right? That would be a short description. I don't know if something else about it. Oh, there are mostly incentives regarding a decentralized exchange coin. I don't know exactly about TerraSwap, but it's very common in PancakeSwap within the Binance Chain ecosystem, that you have the token Cake, and they provide incentives for you to provide liquidity or other actions, and they give you Cake in exchange.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing this details. So one level back for those who are really, really new to the crypto world. So an exchange is a place where you go to buy cryptocurrency, right? Like if you were to buy foreign currencies, you can buy cryptocurrencies. There's two types. One is like a centralized and then a decentralized. And then we have different models operating the exchanges. And centralized exchanges, typically the large ones that you would see are like Binance, Coinbase, I don't know, Huobi, for example. You can find their size on CoinMarketCap. And that's where you can buy mainly the bigger coins already, because it costs money and time to get your project listed. It's like when you are a company and you want to get listed on the NASDAQ or in the DAX 30 in Germany, for example, then you have to provide certain documentation. Right? So it's not so easy to get listed on the centralized exchanges. That's only typically for projects that are already a bit further down the line and a bit more worked out. And then you have decentralized exchanges where actually everyone could, in theory, participate. It's permissionless. And each ecosystem, typically each blockchain ecosystem, has their own decentralized exchange. That's the place where you can buy their tokens with when they are super, super early stage. And actually everyone could participate. But in order to participate, you need a wallet. And now we have different types of wallets, and not every wallet is integrated with every blockchain ecosystem. So the way to look at the blockchain ecosystem map, and this is how we want to wrap up the session today, is there's a reason why we basically asked you to look and get a little bit familiar with each of these different players. This list is maybe not even exhaustive. There's like more players to it, but we kept it short so that you have the biggest, kind of the most relevant concepts to understand. When you want to buy crypto, you go to an exchange, and then you can do research on what kind of exchanges there are. When you want to keep your crypto somewhere, you need a wallet, right? Else you cannot buy. You need to basically store them somewhere. And then there's different ways to store the wallet, and it really depends on your preferences and also like your risk appetite and what you want to do with these coins. If you want to just hold them securely, or if you want to be connected and trade them a lot. Then there's custodians who do the job for you. If you don't want to hold the currency by yourself, you have to pay them a fee to do that. And these are different things we haven't even talked about today. So you can talk about them in your own study groups, like validators. They typically provide the security services to the blockchain so that blockchains can actually be decentralized services or like trustless operating systems. And then we have news and coverage, like which are the main crypto news and outlets that people would use if they want to get to know news about the crypto field. What do they stand for? Whom are they driven by? Then regulators, it's like typically good to understand who are the main regulators for the American markets, for example, the SEC. For the European markets, there's different players. You just want to hear their names and also their recent standpoints. And then others, like who are the biggest investors in the crypto space. They change all the time. There's service providers who bridge old world to new world. And then there's decentralized apps. We haven't even spoken about them, but this is what you would see, for example, Solana ecosystem, but you could do it for any other kind of ecosystem. You will find these maps when you Google for them. Just Google like ecosystem maps, and then you see like who are the big wallet providers with the logos, the names, who are the applications that are building on that blockchain, who are the infrastructure providers. These are like services that pull the data, do something with it, that provide like decentralized storage, file, and so on. There's a lot to learn. The places where you can buy that coin. And then decentralized finance. And I heard in some study groups, somebody was speaking about Raydium and so on. So once you have understood that blockchain ecosystem, you can also look into the decentralized apps that are building on top of that ecosystem to provide certain services to the ecosystem. So it's a big field, and you can get like super expert, but I think for week 2 of our 6 weeks program is already good enough if you kind of understand like, you know, what are the main services or main 1 or 2 big names in each of the ecosystems. That should give you enough foundation to look into week 3, where we then look into more in depth into incentive alignment. We already heard today one of you said it's about liquidity. How do we incentivize liquidity provision? Because if there's no liquidity, you cannot really buy the coin, right? Or you cannot buy the coin without having a big price impact. So it's like if you have a house and you can't sell the house, because if you sold the house, you would need to sell it for €1, which you probably don't want. So we will speak about that in next week, and also about decentralized autonomous organizations, which is more about governance of these projects. But for this week, if you have time, then do a little bit of research and talk in your study groups about these main players to understand what are they doing for the ecosystem. Finally, one tip. So we have these surveys. We have for the crypto coaching survey, we always have them here. You can click on like week 2 recordings, and then you will see like a coaching survey. This is this link. You can fill it. And when you fill it, you get like your email with your own responses. You can track that over the 6 weeks and see what have you learned. And also we will make all the responses from all people available here. So you can, once you submitted your response, you can see the responses of others, and then you can learn not only from your own response, but from the response of others. I hope that was helpful for you guys. We stay available in the Unit Masters Telegram chat. So if you have questions and so on, we have a community lead. Her name is Hannah. She's taking care of helping you find the right study group. And I'll be there for the crypto coaching sessions most of the time. Thanks, everyone, and talk soon, tomorrow, hopefully. Bye.